না প্রভু কথা গেলা আচার্য ঠাকুর কাহা মোর স্বরূপ রূপা কাহা কাহা দাস রঘুনাথ পতিত পাবা কাহা মোর ভট্ট যোগা কাহা কবিরা একা কালে কথা গেলা গৌর নটোরা পাশানে কুটিব মাথা আনালে পশিব পাশানে গৌরাঙ্গ গুণেরা নিধি কথা গেলে পাবা সেসব সঙ্গীর সঙ্গে যে কইল বিলাস সেসব সঙ্গ না পাইয়া কান্দে নরোত্তমদা সে সঙ্গ না পাইয়া কান্দে নরোত্তমদা হরে কৃষ্ণ হরে কৃষ্ণ Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Jaya Vaishnava Thakur Jai Vaishnava Thakur Jaya Vaishnava Thakur Jaya Vaishnava Thakur Ramanujacharya Thakur ki jai. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga accompanied by all of these devotees, in whose association he performed his pastime, Narottam Das simply weeps.
So Mukunda, are we queued up? No, something's going on. All right. Hey Govinda. We don't need a verse, but as long as you're there, you can do it. Sorry, I should have told you earlier. Hang on, hang on. Wait till we get all the basics in place. Hang on, hang on. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvasesha Sunyavari Paskachada Satarani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. We could turn this up just a little bit. Just a little bit. So today
is the Disappearance Day of Ramanujacharya. And, well, I guess I'll say this first.
Whatever you do quietly, okay?
Prabhupada describes that the temple is a base which these soldiers go out and fight Maya. And, of course, speaking for myself, you're all great souls who appear to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But I certainly know my position. And what can we do against Maya? We are tiny jivas. Prabhupada says, being kicked like a football, and he's talking about soccer, the being just bounced this way and that, tossed by the waves of material nature. So, on our own, we are insignificant. I remember a devotee interrupted Prabhupada. He was about to start speaking in Detroit, and the devotee said, "Oh, I'm the most fallen, I'm the most this, I'm the most that." And Prabhupada said, actually, we jivas, we're not the most anything. So, but when we go out to fight, we are not alone. Just like, the movies and they're surrounded by the American Indians. Of course, it's a glorified rewriting of history, but just because the storyline is there, we're surrounded down to the last man, and then all of a sudden you hear the bugle over the hill and the cavalry arrives. So we come, my point being, that we are not alone. We come in a noble, powerful line going all the way back to Krishna's lotus feet. And we should remember, as long, just like we unplugged the cord and everything went dark, as long as we stay connected to the Guru Parampara, these great personalities, it is helpful to take a day like this and to meditate on these great persons. We are under the shelter of their lotus feet. And as long as we've given the example many times, it's Prabhupada's example, and it's a good one, of course. What is different materials have different degrees of conductivity. For example, you use rubber for insulation, it has practically none. A little bit better is water. A little bit better is steel. A little bit better is copper. Now they've got fiber optics and so many different things. Each of them allows a greater degree of currency to flow. What determines the degree of currency that is able to flow through that material? Transparent is close. Who said resistance? Our engineer. They have progressively less degrees of resistance. So to the degree, this is meant to be this, whatever we're going to say today, but the point is, by trying to glorify Ramanujacharya, it's meant to inspire us that when we go out, we are not standing alone. I mean, Prabhupada said that I don't have a PhD, which we often know means piled higher and deeper, or permanent head damage, or prominent humility disorder. We're not anti-education, but you know what I mean. Puffed up like a big chapati. But Prabhupada said, but I don't have a PhD. Prabhupada said, I don't. But Prabhupada
challenged, truth to power in so many different ways. And why? Of course, he was a greatly realized soul, but the primary cause that Prabhupada always gave us was that I was simply delivering the message of my Guru Maharaj. And there's a newspaper reporter there saying to Srila Prabhupada, it's in New York City, and there's a nice lady, and she was getting a picture that, oh, wait, you left your family, you left your home, you left your country, you came all the way to the West, heart attacks, old man, didn't know anybody, 40 rupees. I think Prabhupada actually had $20 or $40, whatever, from Captain, of the Jaladu, and then she said, you were all alone. Prabhupada said, I was never alone. I always had my Guru Maharaj. So we should feel very confident that as long as we study and understand the teachings of our previous acharyas, that they are with us, they are empowering us, and that's who we represent. It's not just some, it's a cult or some Hinduism or thisism or thatism, but we are representing Sanatana Dharma coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, infused by the energy. If you look, and we'll finish it because I want to get to the actual history, but if you look at a phone line, telephone line, you can check it out next time you're out and about, and you'll see that periodically, and you'll see the same thing on the power lines. The whatever you call it, the cable or the wire, whatever's transmitting the electricity, every now and then there'll be like a bulge. There's a packet there. You know what that is? It's a booster, because the signal comes along and, by friction, entropy or whatever it is, it becomes weaker and weaker. When it comes into that booster, whoom, sends it out again. So these great acharyas are boosters that appear in the Sampradaya and just re-energize and re-infuse and present according to time, place, and circumstance. So if we read Srila Prabhupada's books, everything I've got here came from Chaitanya Charitamrita. I mean, I there's that little book, the Ramanujacharya's life and different things and so many things, but actually, I could confirm everything in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and so for Ramanujacharya, there were 508 different hits on his name, used in different contexts. So we should feel very confident. Like David and Goliath, we're up against Goliath, but because we have these great acharyas, okay, as long as we're under their lotus feet. So there it is, and we say disappearance. Of course, they say that of the two, appearance and disappearance, the disappearance is considered more relishable. On one hand, of course, on one hand, we just read this, the pain of separation, but they've manifest their pastimes. Appearance, okay, what are they going to do? Disappearance, okay, here's what they've done. So it's a nice time. So there are how many Vaishnava Sampradayas? 4. And what are those 4 Sampradayas? Who knows other than Raj and Vijay? Balaram? Yeah, Ram. Madhva Sampradaya, which is the Brahma, coming from Lord Brahma, Teni Brahma Hriday Adikavaye. What's the next one? Shri Sampradaya, coming from Lakshmi, and of course Ramanujacharya appears in the Shri Sampradaya. They're famous for their deity worship, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And what is the other Sampradaya? Kumara Sampradaya, from the 4 Kumaras. And that's Nimbarkacharya? Yeah. And then what is the last one? Rudra or Shiva Sampradaya, and that's Vishnu Swami. So, I'll say this. He appeared in 1017, so that's about 1,000 years ago, in a place called Perumbadur in Tamil Nadu. That is just like the sun appears on the east, but the sun is always present It appears that Orient comes, to orient yourself where you look to the east because that's where the sun is. But we know that actually we're the ones that are shifting. The sun is a constant. So these great acharyas, they appear and disappear, but they're ever present like the sun. So he lived for 120 years. His birthplace is about 40 miles southwest of Chennai or Madras in Tamil Nadu, South India. He's one of the great acharyas of South India. And as we were saying the other day, there's an arc. Why doesn't God just come and straighten everything out? Just show up and knock our heads together and get everybody rowing in the right direction. Well, he does, frankly. But because there's that fine-tuning... Anyway, I taught a devotee one time how to drive. How many things are wrong in this picture? My teaching to someone. But anyway, the gas and the clutch. You got to time those too. You got to. If you don't time them, the thing stalls. You lurch forward, the thing stalls out. So Krishna, perfect balance of Krishna pushing us in the right direction and the free will of the living entity. He doesn't intrude on, because otherwise, what is the meaning of bhakti? What is the relishable relationship if you're there at gunpoint? So Krishna perfectly balances free will simultaneously. He's pushing. So it's that balance of gas and clutch, free will, and the determination of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna doesn't, and we are stubborn, especially in Kali Yuga. One of the symptoms of Kali Yuga is that people are so boneheaded and stubborn and arrogant. It's just the nature of the place. That's why everybody argues with everybody and so many different things. So the point I'm trying to make is that people were just completely exploiting the Vedic literature and using it for, animal slaughter and rationalizing this and that, just like they so many things. You've got in who was that guy, Bomsaway LeMay, the Air Force general, who gave a famous lecture about in Vietnam, rallying of the troops, kill a commie for Christ. So, they exploit, thou shalt not kill. Well, they've, the whole story. So they'd completely abandoned the Vedic literature. They were using the Vedic literature as a fig leaf cover for sinful activities, and therefore Buddha said, forget the Vedas. But follow moral instruction. The whole thing, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and all of that. But Buddhism is Prabhupada calls it spiritual suicide. Leaves you just zero, nirvana, finish with work. The bubble pops and that's it. So you go from just gross sense gratification, then you get some kind of morality, some kind of, with Buddhism, at least some restraint and some, let me just try to become disentangled from this feverish karma. But you detach from the Vedic culture, you detach from the soul and all of that. So then you have the next, so this is Krishna pushing us in his own way, moving things along. So next you have Sankaracharya. Sankaracharya says, no, it's not just nothing. It's impersonal Brahman, it's oneness, but it's something. There's something eternal. There's Sat and Asat. So the Sat is eternal. But so it's another notch forward. And then you have Ramanujacharya in Vishishtavada. He says that it's a qualified oneness. And we'll get into that in a second, Actually, he had the darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We're going to get into that. But the point is that just nudging it that step further. His famous example of merging into one, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used it and Prabhupada used it. So who knows, and here's a big hint, the individual, how that qualified oneness, is Katha Upanishad Nitya Nityanam? Okay, Nitya Nityanam means, they say, that what is it? Tat Famasi, that thou art, Is that what it is? Yeah. It's all, we are one. We're all part, all eternal. Nitya Nityanam. But qualified oneness, what is the next line of that verse? Nitya Nityanam? Chaitanas Chaitananam. No, Eko Bahunam Yovada. That's what I wanted to say. So that's not the next one. But the conclusion. So Nitya Nityanam, what does it mean? We're all eternal. Hey, we're all found our home and home. Okay, fine, great. But how does it conclude? Eko Bahunam Yovada Kaman. That there is one chief eternal, and he's maintaining all the others. So just like Jesus, Father, Son. So there's the oneness, but there's that one is maintaining all the other ones. So using the color green, that's a big hint. This example, and Raj is laughing because he knows where I'm going. So what is the example that we hear from Srila Prabhupada, but it actually comes from Ramanujacharya giving this example of qualified oneness? Bird in the tree. When you see the green bird fly into a green tree, and you see those wonderful parrots in Vrindavan, they see them fly into this, and it looks like they've merged. So, but they haven't. They haven't lost their individuality. This whole idea of the river, when the river flows into the ocean, it all becomes one. Or when the rock the waves splash against the rock and the drop of water, for a moment it's independent and it splashes back into the ocean, becomes one. It's just such rubbish. What caused it to splash and break? What caused the ocean to become one? There was a cause. It's full of holes. But no. The example is, yes, the same green bird in a green tree. But there's a distinction. So that's his platform. So back from Ramanujacharya, then you have Madhvacharya, who really drove it home. Dvaita, with the famous, not a precursor to Winston Churchill or an early hippie, but that there's two. And then later on, it comes all the way to the point of Madhavinda Puri, weaving in that there's rasa, that there's taste. That what is the benefit of there being two? Is that an alienation? What is the advantage of there being two? There can be a relationship. If we're all one, then, I eat a samosa and everybody in the room's full. What's that all about, But because there's two, then there's relationship. So ultimately this leads, the whole point is there's an arc, and what does this arc, and Ramanujacharya is one of those key cornerstones of the arc. And we're going to show a picture. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it's true. Form has an effect. When they call it kinetic learning. When you add, the more senses you can engage, the more the picture becomes clear. Like you go into those beautiful cathedrals in Europe. Wow, you get a sense of awe and reverence just by the sacred space, the way those things are designed, and with the beautiful stained glass. It's a moving experience, frankly, if you're a little pious. And it's meant to instill that, of course, we're off the track, but creatureliness, that you feel very small and God is very big, awe and reverence. But still, it's a powerful experience. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the temple he built at right there in Navadvip, in Mayapur, his house is there, but that temple, and we have a picture of them, beautiful Gandharvika Giridhari, the deities installed, but there's four spikes, there's four small towers that support the main tower with Radha and Krishna underneath it. What are those four towers? If you circumambulate it, it's each one of the four acharyas. And each of them is one notch forward to, what is the conclusion? Who's standing next to Gandharvika Giridhari on that temple built by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? What is the culmination of the four acharyas? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Achinta Beda Beda Tattva. That's the perfection. That's the full encompassment of all of them. And by that visual, people go there, they circumambulate, they understand, all of these acharyas, They're not different. Oh, there's so many teachers and they say so many things. We hear this all the time. Well, there's so many teachers and they say so. No, actually, they're all saying the same thing. Even in modern times, Muhammad, Jesus, frankly, Buddha, they're all saying the same thing. Same theme is there if you have the eyes to see. So that's Ramanuja's position in our ontology or our understanding of Gaudiya Sampradaya. And one of his, he did not speak so much from Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, we have Sridhar Swami who speaks from the Bhagavatam. And our acharyas, most of our other acharyas speak on Bhagavatam. But because he was trying to bend these impersonalists, he went right, what are the impersonalists, what is their core shastra that they stand on? And of which Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary. And Bhagavatam begins with the same, invocation of Bhagavatam is the first line of Vedanta Sutra, confirming by Vyasadeva that the Bhagavatam is the natural and proper commentary on Vedanta Sutra. But just to grab them by the nose and shake them, what Shastra was the cornerstone of Ramanujacharya's teachings? Vedanta Sutra. So he speaks his Shribhasya, he's speaking on the Vedanta Sutra. Just so they have no wiggle. There's no way they can get around it, you know. So that's a little history. Another one of his examples was that, well, I'll just say it. Okay, just to keep you guys awake. What is the argument? What is the problem with half-hen logic? This was actually used, this example, by Ramanujacharya. And I'll tell you what context to use it in a minute. But anyone know Alex, you know what half-hen logic is? Anyone know half-hen logic? Anyone know the example? Raj knows. I know you know, but you know the goose that lays the golden egg. You've heard this story, and you know in the West, you know, a guy calculates. Geez, man, the golden egg is great, but I got to feed this thing, and it's gobbling. And I don't know if you've heard about geese. They make a lot of noise. Actually, they're always honking. And so, what was his conclusion? Cut the thing in half. No, just keep the half that lays the egg, and I'll get rid of the gobbling half. Was that an intelligent calculation? He lost the whole thing. So Ramanujacharya, using Vedanta Sutra, took some, of course, Shankaracharya, Sankaracharya. Sankaracharya, of course, is Lord Shiva, and he has his Leela that he was playing, you know, and it's a whole other story. Who also had the darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Ramanujacharya faulted Sankaracharya because he said Sankaracharya selectively takes verses from the Vedic literature to prove impersonalism. And Ramanujacharya's argument is you have to take the whole corpus. You have to take all of the Vedas. If you want to understand the conclusion of the Vedas, you cannot cherry pick. You have to take the total picture. Just like Prabhupada translated the Sri Ishopanishad, because generally speaking, they give an impersonal cast. They take the Upanishads and they spin them in an impersonal way. And Prabhupada, in the same mood of Ramanujacharya, jumped on the Sri Ishopanishad and pulls it right out, because the Sri Ishopanishad is one of the most personal presentations. So Vaishnavas, we understand impersonalism. It's not like we don't. We didn't. Geez, I never thought of that. The sun and the sun. Because the sunlight is in my room, but the sun globe is not. Never thought of that. You know, source and byproduct. We understand perfectly. All about Brahman, all about the personal. We understand their premises, but they do not understand the personal. Because they don't take the full corpus. They don't take the full writings of Srila Vyasadeva, of the Vedic literatures. So in addition to jumping on Vedanta Sutra, they're just like, you see how you blow up those buildings? The plunger and the whole thing telescopes in on itself. So our great acharyas, they know the mood of the time, and they just go, just like Prabhupada, he jumped right on impersonalism, he jumped right on science, he jumped, life comes from life. Prabhupada jumped right on it, because that's what's in everybody's head. So Ramanujacharya went right to the core of the thing, Vedanta Sutra, and blew him right out of the water, and then said, and you've got to take the foot, and showed how Sankara was cherry-picking the Vedic literature, and therefore there's an impersonal concept. But when you take the total works of Vyasadeva, you understand the impersonal and the personal. You cannot apply, that was his point, of half-hand logic. You have to take the whole thing. So that's a little his role in our Vaishnava lineage. And one last thing, because they say, oh, it's all false, it's all an illusion, it's all a dream. I mean, they all say the same thing. That anyway, whatever. I don't want to get too far afield, but every time Prabhupada would say, it's just classic Srila Prabhupada. Maybe we'll make this into 2 classes, because I don't want to skip these things. But it's a great method. When they ever ask you, have you heard of Swami so-and-so, or have you ever heard of Yogi so-and-so? Raj, what would Prabhupada always say? Exactly. Prabhupada would say, who? I've never heard of him. Which immediately reduces the person, because they're thinking, oh, he's a, Prabhupada, who? Never. Because he's not one of the great acharyas in our, one of the Sampradaya. So who is this upstart pygmy, So-and-so, so-and-so. This Ananda, that Ananda. So Prabhupada would say, who? And then what was the follow-on question? It's fantastic. You're out there at the book table, and they say, well, this and that, or I'm follower so and then, or, what do you ask them? What's his philosophy? You get them to flesh out their position, and it's always going to be hackneyed impersonalism. It's always the same old trope. It's just dressed up a little. They come in this way or that way. But it's the same old rubbish. And when they try to tell you that, oh, it's all a dream and it's all an illusion, and, Ramanujacharya's example was, if you see a shell and you think it's silver, like you ever seen like an abalone shell or something, that it'll sparkle, even a mussel shell, So, okay. Now, the point is that silver is real, and the shell is real. So they're both real. What's the mistake? The mistake, the illusion, is thinking that the shell is silver. It's not that the shell is not true, and it's not that silver is not true. It's your misapplication. It's your misunderstanding that's the illusion. So Ramanujacharya says this material world is real, but it's temporary. It has its benefits. You can use it in Krishna's service. But to call this it's all false, it's all illusion, it's all a dream, no. The dream is that you're thinking it's eternal. That's the illusion. Not that this is illusion. It's temporary, but it's real. And it connotes, why does the shadow have 5 fingers? Because the hand has 5. There's that guy in Vrindavan who has 6 fingers. He advertises on his card as he's a tailor, He's got an extra edge there, So whatever the hand is, the shadow will be the same. So therefore, this is another point. So these are some of the points that Ramanuja makes, and we can see how you're just bending the conditioned soul to the full understanding of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the material world is temporary, and because there's temporary form, what is the import of the shadow? The shadow has 5 fingers because the hand has 5 fingers. So that this world has, although it's temporary, but it has form, it has relationships, it has emotions. What is indicative of? Why does that matter? Anybody know other than Raj? Oh, come on. Anybody home? Yeah, it means the original has it. So, okay, this is temporary. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it's a great sentence, that the material world is dictionary for the spirit. The material world, it's a great line, isn't it? The material world is dictionary for the spirit. So you can understand, okay, this is indicative, as the shadow with its 5 fingers, and is indicative of the actual object. So Ramanuja makes this point. Yeah, this world is temporary. The shell is not silver, but silver is real. So it is indicative of relationships, eternal relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you can see how Ramanuja was powerfully, punching it up for the Vaishnavas. So there it is. Now we'll go into, jeez. We'll go into just a little bit of history, just because it's fun. And then I guess after all this work, we'll do this, we'll figure out something else. Sorry, Mukunda. I appreciate it. So, he had an impersonalist guru, Yadava Prakash. And his impersonal guru, he was a great Sanskrit scholar, and therefore he was a great scholar. So Ramanujacharya, as a young boy, went to study under him. Knew everything. As soon as he heard it, memorized it and mastered it. Now, Yadava Prakash was a mystic yogi and a magician. He had all kinds of mystic powers and this and that. Ramanujacharya, whatever he heard, he immediately understood and memorized. He was his favorite student because Ramanujacharya was so humble and so obedient and this and that. So one day, Ramanujacharya, it doesn't give his age, but he's younger than 18. So you can, because later, that's another part of the story. So we can understand he's probably, between 6 and 18. So just a young boy, young boy. And he's massaging Yadava Prakash. And one of the other students, asks about, he asks a question about Narayan, Lord Narayan. And Yadava Prakash answers in an impersonal way. I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to say what he said. But he uses a very crass analogy to describe, Lord Narayan. Now, at the time, Ramanujacharya, young student, is massaging his guru. And Ramanujacharya became so wounded by this impersonal, demeaning. The Lord has I'll just say it. The Lord has beautiful red, his eyes are tinged a little bit in the corners red. And it's described like the rising of the sun. That's just, that red, it's a beautiful color. Just a little hint, and he compared that, Yadava Prakash, to the rear end of a monkey. And Ramanujacharya just couldn't take it. But he didn't say anything. But he began shedding tears, and his tears were so hot that they burned Yadavacharya. So Yadavacharya is getting massaged, and the hot tears fell. Yadavacharya said, "Oh, what is this?" And so he said, Ramanujacharya said, "Why are you shedding these hot tears of anguish?" He said, this answer is very hard for me to accept. So Yadava Prakash said, "Oh, you've got a better answer?" And Ramanujacharya just came out with a fantastic explanation, which embarrassed Yadava Prakash. So he became a little envious. It was the seed of envy. Now later on, because Yadava Prakash was a great mystic and a yogi and all this different stuff, there was a princess. The devotees in South Africa used to advertise on their cards that in addition to everything else, sanskars, weddings, this and that, they would also do exorcisms. So, and Bhakti we're way off field, but I'll just finish with this and then we'll wrap up. But Bhakti Charu Maharaj told me that he was preaching in South Africa, and there was some nice little Gujarati widow, little widow, and they were the white sari and just completely pious. She got haunted by a ghost somehow or other, and she would she would smoke cigars she would smoke cigars and call for cane whiskey, like rum, they make rum from sugar cane juice, and speak in a deep voice. So the family was completely distraught. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj said, following in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he would go every day for a week and read a chapter of Bhagavatam. And when he finished after 7 days of reading a chapter every day, all of a sudden the old lady began flopping on the floor. The ghost left, and confirmation that the ghost left was a branch snapped off a big tree and fell to the ground. And the little old Gujarati lady returned to her natural, pious state. So there was a princess. These things are going on. I remember whenever Prabhupada said these things are, Timmingall fish, or okay, it's there in Shastra. Because what the hell do we know about anything? We don't even know what's happening on the other side of this wall, and we're going to challenge Shastra. So the Yadava Prakash was called. This princess had become haunted by a ghost, and all talking like a madman and all kinds of crazy things, right? Talking in a deep voice, it's described. So many things. And Yadava Prakash couldn't exorcise the ghost, couldn't get the ghost out. In fact, the ghost began mocking him and teasing him and saying, "Yeah, that's the best you got." I don't know exactly what, but you got the idea. And the ghost said, "Actually, only your disciple." Because actually the ghost wanted to be saved. Indradumna Swami told me this personally. I'll finish this theme of ghosts and we'll wrap up. Indradumna Swami told me this personally, and I've mentioned it here before, but for the ether and the people who are out there. He was doing door-to-door Sankirtan in Paris. They were in a well-to-do area, and he knocked on the door, and the maid came in the little maid's outfit and said, "No, the mademoiselle is too busy, not now, go away. So, okay, fine, we all know how that is, Every no is a step closer to a yes, never be discouraged. So he went on down, next door. Got a couple doors down, the maid came running after, said, no, come back, they want you to come back. So he came back to he told me this personally, he came back to the house. Turns out they were having a seance. And the mademoiselle, mistress of the house, and her rich friends, they were all, holding hands, and they had a medium. Now, usually those people are a fraud. They got their knees under the table to make the table shake, and this. But this one must have been genuine, because the ghost began speaking through the medium, and the ghost said, "There's someone at the door selling spiritual books. Get them. It will be good for you and good for me." The ghost wanted to get delivered. If the ghost figured, if I do a little Sankirtan, they buy a Bhagavatam, I'll get some mercy, and they'll read Bhagavatam, and I'll get released. So sometimes the ghost, it's a hellish condition being a ghost. So the ghost said, if you want to get me out of her, you have to get Ramanujacharya. I think he had another brahmacharya, I forget his name at the time. But anyway, so he came, and it's described that he began reading Bhagavatam, and that's what he said. He began offering prayers to Lord Narayan. And then finally the ghost said, if you just put your foot on the head of the princess, and I'll go away. So he put having heard Bhagavatam, he was purified. The Ramanujacharya put his foot on the head of the princess. Immediately the princess was recovered, and a big banyan tree snapped in half out in front. So this also, Yadava Prakash was deeply offended by this. I'll just finish this Yadava Prakash Leela, that's what I'll do. He was deeply offended, embarrassed, and so this is one and another about his disciple. Rather, Prabhupada, of course we never surpass Srila Prabhupada, but when Prabhupada's disciples would do something, Prabhupada was so proud and so pleased, when the son does more than the father, good father becomes pleased. He thinks, just see, such a nice son. So the disciple, the guru becomes pleased when the disciple makes advancement. But Yadava Prakash, this impersonalist, that austerity makes your heart hard. He didn't feel like that. Oh, I have such a wonderful disciple, So the final was, Yadava Prakash devised a plan to kill Ramanujacharya. Now he's under 18 at this time, because at 18 when he split, broke from Yadava Prakash. But he had a cousin, Govinda, who was also a disciple of Yadava Prakash, and they had this ruse that, oh, we'll go on pilgrimage, and in that pilgrimage you have to go through a dense forest. And Yadava Prakash's scheme was, and he had some cohorts working with him, some of his disciples that, were going to help kill Ramanujacharya. And they said, when we're in the forest in the middle of the night, we'll lull him away and we'll kill him. And we'll hide the body, and they'll think, oh, he must have wandered off, he's eaten by a tiger or something happened, and that's how we'll cover up and we'll get rid of him. But Govinda was in the forest also collecting firewood for his guru, and they didn't see him, and he heard the whole plot. So he went back and told his cousin Ramanujacharya that they're planning to kill you. So Ramanujacharya immediately began, escape through the forest. But it's a dense, dark forest. He's a young boy. He's all alone. What to do? All of a sudden, a hunter and his wife appeared. And they said, oh, you're all alone in the forest. We'll help you. We'll show you the path. Now, it was a 3-day journey. I think they were going to country, whatever. It was a 3-day journey out of the forest. All of a sudden, in the middle of the night, crack of lightning, thunder, poof. He's at the edge of the forest, and there's the city he was going. He's home, Kanchipuram. I think it was Kanchipuram or this street, whatever it was. He was home. 3-day journey accomplished with this flash of light, and the hunter couple was gone. It was actually Lord Vishnu, Narayan and Lakshmi actually helped him out of the forest. So we'll end on that blissful note, and I guess, who gives class tomorrow? Raj, okay, you give class tomorrow. Who gives class on Tuesday? Who gives class on Wednesday? Oh, we'll figure it out. So we'll pick up and we'll because this is just the tip of the iceberg about this great Acharya Ramanujacharya. So we'll end there. Ramanujacharya ki jai. Hare Krishna. So I'm embarrassed, Mukunda.